What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Bill. This is Jeremy. This is Jeremy's Bronco. Now Jeremy has got the regular old front bumper on his Bronco, and we're going to change that. But what we're changing it with is an interesting story. If you're a member of the Bronco 6G forum, somebody there posted a couple of months ago that they found an alternative to Ford's mod bumper. It's a replica of it from China. Phil on the forum went ahead and ordered a couple of them to do a sample. He thought they ended up at the bottom of the ocean, or he got scanned, because they said it was months ago. They never showed up. Well, they are here now. So to get started, we'll go ahead and open this up and see what we're working with. All right, so our first casualty. This was broken. It's been broken a while because it's kind of heated up, and the plastic covers that go over the bolt holes, this one is broke. I think we could probably put some super glue on there, or might not even need to. If we get everything lined up, it'll probably sit there and you won't notice it because that should be up underneath. But something to note. This one, on the other hand, is not broken. Now it's interesting that this is a lot differently shaped than the other one, because I know on the OEM they're very similar and you kind of have to hold them up to place to figure out which side's which. So actually they are the same shape, just that that's how bad that one's bent. You may need to heat that up to bend it back. But yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. And this is what it does look like. Here's the Ford tow hook. And here's theirs. And the texture is a bit different. They actually feel close to the same weight. I will say the Ford one looks a little nicer. Like the finish looks a little more, I don't know, polished. Not that this one's bad, just that looks like you can see like sanding marks or grinding marks in there that they didn't clean up. They could have went with a smaller grit or covered it with some texture like Ford did. But other than that, I mean, they seem pretty much identical. I would say that looks like the modular bumper from Ford. The only difference is it doesn't have Bronco bolts. The bolts don't say Bronco on them. Aside from that, it's a pretty good match. What do you say? Yeah. All right, you may notice the Bronco has changed colors. It was red when it pulled in, and now it is blue. And that is because we are doing this install on a different Bronco. In the other Bronco, it had the tow hooks here. Jeremy didn't want us to cut those. So Bluey the Bronco here has pulled in. Thank you. And he has the capable bumper. So two things. We'll get to make sure that the sensors fit and work correctly, which Jeremy did not have the front sensors. So that's cool. And then he also has the capable bumper, so the tow hooks are up top, much like these tow hooks are, so they're not built in to the intercooler mounts, so we don't have to do any cutting. We'll go ahead and get back to where we were with Jeremy's Bronco, with taking the skid plate off, and we'll see how these are installed. Pretty sure it's similar to that, where these are plastic covers we have to take off, and then there'll just be 3 bolts right there, and then we will see how this fits. All right, now here's the difference in those brackets. So this is one piece, where the other, if you have the non-capable or non-HD bumper, it has that loop kind of welded in there as part of that. So obviously this is different. Now we have this front piece here. It should just pop off. I've got a plastic trim tool here. And don't want to pull too hard because you have your sensor right here. Now, one thing I will mention that these are very sensitive, so don't lay this down anywhere where you can scratch it, because if it gets a scratch on it, you will have to replace it, because it'll start, you'll start getting errors. And you can always tell where the errors are, because when you turn on your sensor, it'll show like which quadrant is close to hitting something, and it'll always be like one spot. It always says that it's about to hit something, and it's not. It's just a scratch or some dirt or anything. Sometimes you can clean the connections with a I can't think of the name of the stuff.
That grease that you
use for the electrical, I can't think of the name of the stuff.
I don't know either, but I know what you're talking about.
But you can spray that in there and it'll work, but for the most part, just be careful not to scratch these up. So the way the sensors are held in is just these little plastic clips that hold the outside edges, and then the inside, if you pull that back, and on the front, the top and the bottom, the whole sensor just comes sliding right out of that little insert. But we'll leave that in there for right now, just so we're not moving it around and scratching it. Just go ahead and disconnect the cable. But those slide out super easy. And then disconnect. This is the fog lights, and I wanted to take a look at this connector, see if we can't find some type of pigtail to use to this for a future video. And then it's just got a couple of Christmas trees holding the wire harness in. We'll follow those along, pull them out, and when we transfer everything over, we want to make sure that this side stays to this side, which it's going to be hard to mess it up since it has the big connector on the driver's side over there. So yeah, we'll just keep taking this apart and then we'll transfer it over. Really, you just gotta squeeze that tip right there enough to lift the front side up and pull on there, which is hard to do. And then you could kind of see the two clips that hold the sensor itself in are right there. And then that whole thing just slides out of it like so. And it just holds onto these two tabs right here. So we're going to set this one up here. That's the right one, and we have the other two pieces up there to show which position. It shouldn't matter which position they go in, but we'll just go ahead and reinstall them in the same spot just to make sure everything's the same.
Man, that's not dirty at all.
And this is what a Broncos bumper should look like.
Mm-hmm.
Set that there for a second so we can put that back in place and put all the screws back in so we don't lose anything. Alright, so this half is going to go over there. We'll do the same thing on that half. And then we'll swap bumpers around and we'll start installing the harness on that one. Alright, now that we've got the harness out, we've got these plates, and this has got the 4, I don't know what size hex that is, screws holding it in, and then you can take this mounting plate out. Now this does seem a little thinner than the OEM bracket, which I don't have one of those here to compare it to side by side, but I think the OEM bracket, this bracket is a little bit thicker from memory, but that's going off my memory, which isn't necessarily always the greatest. But take that out, we can have one sensor is going to be here, our other sensor's out here, so looks like we're going to have to take this other piece out too, which is going to be multiple of these buttons or screws on the bottom and the top to take this whole other bracket out of there in order to get to that sensor hole over here. So let me go ahead and take those out. Looks like 1, 2, 3, and these are the 3 screws if you're mounting like a light in here. That's the 3 screws that those normally use, so take those out. There's one over here, and then it feels like 1, 2, 3 on top. And it looks like the ones on the bottom do use clips, and the ones on the top actually have a nut on the back side, so it's a screw in a nut, not just a screw going into these clips. So let me take those out and we can start plugging in these sensors. Okay, so I pulled that piece out. He's doing that on this side, but now we can get to the sensor holes, and these should just line up and snap in there. Should being the optimum word there. It snapped in there. It just took a little effort to get it to snap in, and I had to put the camera down so I could hold the outside to keep it from pushing through, but it did snap in there. Connect that wire, and then our other sensor's going to go right there. Now it would be nice if all these Christmas tree had, and it looks like there is some places to put some of them, so we'll see once we get all the sensors in and get everything lined up. We'll see, yeah, we'll see where we can snap. And there's some up on the bracket here. So let me get this other sensor in, and I'll put this back together, and then we'll see how well we could tuck these wires up out of the way. All right, so have the harness just kind of laid in there, how it's going to go. If you have wires that you're going to connect right here to or if you're going to connect the fog light connector to lights, then running it right out the end here would probably be your best bet. We don't have anything we're going to connect to there right this minute, so we're going to go ahead and tape that up and leave it tucked up under here so it's not getting full of mud. It does mean that whenever he is ready to do some wiring, you probably have to take that back apart, but at least then it won't be ruined. So then this piece here kind of breaks off, and it's right there where there's a cutout on that side, so that'll fit. And then these sensors plug right in, everything plugs right into it, everything fitting with no problem. Well, let me find some wood to knock on. As long as this main harness reaches, then we're good to go. All right, so we've got the bumper together. Everything seems to fit pretty good. We'll see if we have enough cable on that side. And we have the harness going across here, and it seems to be tucked up in there good enough, but there's no way to like attach it to make sure it's not bouncing around or eventually going to flop out of there, other than maybe put some 3M tape or something in there just to stick it up there to make sure it doesn't flop down. That's like good. If you try to attach it over to the one of this side or that side, then it's actually going to pull it down in front of there. Looks like it's got some clips down at the bottom, but I think that would be, depending on the angle, that would become more visible than having it up there at the top. Yeah, or enough length to run it down. It looks like maybe that's what they had intended, that you would run it down here and back up. Yeah, so I think tucked up there is the way to do it. And Yeah, I'm trying to think how that harness was run. I think it was fairly similar, but yeah, it didn't have those same connectors. But strangely enough, it did have fog light or some type of two-wire connector that you could install fog lights to or something, but they are different connectors than these. But there is no fog light with the HD bumper or the mod bumper, so I still don't know what those maybe. But yeah, those harnesses would probably be different too. So who knows? But the last thing to do are the tow hooks. There are these little screws what holds those big tow hooks on there. Now, it doesn't actually add any stability. It just makes installing the bumper easier because you just install it there so it'll hold it into place while you line the bumper up and get the bolts through. Otherwise, you would have to hold the bumper up, hold this up, and then also try to get a bolt through. This just makes it super simple that it holds it in place, and we can get that. So let's go ahead and let's kind of lean this back. This pin here,
Okay.
there's like a little divot that it sits in, and then your screw goes in there. Now, I said this is just to get things aligned. You don't want to over tighten these. Don't ask me how I know. Although the OEM bumper, it is a 10mm bolt, not a hex, the button head hex, but it's similar setup, but they give you a 10mm bolt, but it's a very fragile 10mm bolt, and if you go too hard, you will break that off in there, and you'll have to drill out that screw from the hook. So just snug it. Like I said, it's just there to help facilitate keeping everything lined up when you go to put the bumper on, so you're not having to try to balance that piece while you're doing everything else. So we'll go ahead and put the other one on, and then we'll set this bumper up and see how it fits. Yeah, it doesn't really provide any structural support, but
Yeah, it's just to hold it on there
yeah, so
until you get it mounted with these other holes.
yes. So the bumper did come with some supplied bolts for mounting. We're going to go ahead and just reuse the OEM ones. The OEM ones are a bit longer, even though some of that length is just the tapering to make it easier to get the bolts started. But we know the quality of those bolts. Since we're putting the front bumper on, it's going to be a little heavier. Let's stick with the bolts that we know are good from Ford. Not saying these bolts are bad, I'm just saying we don't necessarily know how good they are. So everything should be in place. We'll go ahead, grab a bolt each, and then grab a side, and we'll go ahead and set this up there and see how it fits. And it's just kind of sitting in there. Before we tighten things up too much, let's make sure our cable's going to connect over here.
Right here. There's a lot of gap here.
Yeah, we should be able to lift it up, hopefully. So we'll get the bolt started. Oh, I don't think that should be sticking out like that. This plug is what the plug goes into, and there is a Christmas tree that goes into a tab up there. That tab is super thin. It's just a thin piece of aluminum. So as you're trying to get that out, that will flex and bend quite a bit. And then, but getting it out of there gives you some maneuverability. So, got the jack on there and sitting. It looks like it's tilted forward just a bit. We'll try to tighten it, see if that pulls it up. If not, I do have some spacers we could put on the bottom to kind of make that work. To pull the bottom out if needed, but I think it's just well, we need to check side to side too, probably, which actually looks, maybe could go to the left a smidge.
You know what? Maybe if I turn my wheel straight, it might help us out a little bit.
Straight. Oh, don't look directly in the headlights.
Don't go to the light.
All right, so skid plate fit on there with no problem. Lines up, looks like it belongs together. The bumper itself fits on there. Everything appears to be working. To the untrained eye, I don't think anybody would even realize that it's not an OEM bumper. I think the only real giveaway is the bolts. The bolts are the only giveaway, and if unless somebody is a Bronco enthusiast, they're not even going to notice that. What do you think?
Looks good.
All right. So you gonna leave it on there for a bit?
I'm gonna leave it on for a bit.
All right. So, well, Dave's gonna leave this on. We'll see how it holds up over time. You'll report back if it starts rusting or anything weird starts happening. It starts transforming into butterflies, or who knows what happens with stuff. Like, people have weird ideas of what's going to happen to anything that ships from China. So as far as install goes, it fits. The capable bumper harness does fit. You can transfer it over and everything appears to work. The only thing, you do not have adaptive cruise control, correct?
No.
But that sits right there, and I don't imagine we wouldn't have had to change anything for that. And I don't imagine this bumper would change how that works at all. The only thing that's the only thing we are not able to confirm. Everything else, it works, is transferable, and everything. So Dave, Bluey the Bronco, on Instagram, check him out. See what things he's up to with this new bumper, and definitely check out the Bronco 6G forum. I'll link to the thread where this whole thing became a question of whether or not this was a viable alternative or not. So thank you, Phil, for letting me play with this, and thank you, Dave, for letting me install it, and we'll see how it works out. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more videos like this again in the future, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.